Today there's another update video on Bitcoin and Ethereum because for the first time in a while I opened X again, and I have to say the mood there is currently so bearish and I honestly don't understand why. We're experiencing a drop at the moment. Yes, maybe we've had several days in a row where we're correcting, but I want to share or show you something that I've already shown in my Telegram group. This happens regularly. But in such hype and momentum as we've just had, especially with Ethereum, where we just kept going up and everyone thought there won't be any correction. No, guys, we're in a bull market, and in a bull market, as I've looked up for you again now, we have corrections. And unfortunately, that's something people often forget during a hype momentum when they think, okay, it's only going up from here, it's just going up. For example, here we have the year 2017. I'll go through this really quickly with you so you don't forget, or so you keep in mind that we do have corrections. In 2017, during the bull market year, we had corrections of 30%, 40%, 19%, 37%, then again 30%, and again 20%. Of course, back then, Bitcoin wasn't worth as much yet, and there wasn't as much volume in it either. But despite everything, we are entering the next bull market, which actually already started here. But then in 2020, the virus caused us to take a short break. But even in this bull market, as we were rising, we had a 21% correction, and then again almost a 20% correction. If we continue to look ahead, when the bull market started in 2020, we had a 22% correction, then 17%, then again 31%, another 25%, 18%, and at one point even 55% before we eventually reached the last bull market top. And if we look at the current situation, here we also had 20%, another 20%, and 33%. I think people tend to forget all of this a bit when they're caught up in such a bullish hype. Here it was almost 19% again, nearly 32% and 13%. And right now, and I don't quite understand the current mood because this 10% correction isn't really that bad. And yet people are already asking, was that the bull market top or not? In my opinion. You know my videos. Guys, I've already exited partially from Bitcoin and partially from Ethereum. But let's take another look at the Bitcoin chart now. Overall, there is of course one thing that has been worrying me for a while. We've already talked about this. That's this bearish divergence. We have this declining RSI and this rising price. Despite all that, I might not see it as that bearish because this would be the case here if we include it like this. Also take another look at Ethereum right away. But that would be a massive bearish divergence that could play out for us. We actually had the same thing happen here before. Take a look at this. We went in here. Here was this bearish divergence, and after that came this correction. I think that was about 35%, roughly 32%. That's exactly what we're seeing now, something similar. But as I drew earlier, let me go back to that once more. We still have one possibility, and that now depends on this weekly close. Because if this really holds and plays out, we have the possibility here for this inverse head and shoulders, which broke out here, had a retest, but unfortunately hasn't managed to continue rising yet. The weekly close will show whether we close below it and perhaps continue to go down, or whether we keep moving higher. But you can see here, last time the weekly close was respected very well. With two weekly candles, one here and one here, that was actually our bottom at this line. That's why it's definitely important to wait for the weekly chart here. What I don't like so much, to be honest, is simply the breakout of this upward trend, because at this point in time, we've at least had a break downward through these upward trend support lines. Despite all that, if we look at it horizontally, we're actually still at a support zone. That would be exactly this price range here, which was our top here, served as support here once, and is currently providing support again. If we don't make a lower low here now, and that's the only thing I'm currently watching. If we break below this last one, because as is clearly evident, we have a wonderful uptrend continuing here, but our last higher low, which we had here, and higher high, we shouldn't break below that right now, because otherwise we could actually enter a bit more of a bearish phase. We'll see that in a moment as well when we compare it now with the 4. The companies have, guys, that was a pump. It was just incredible. Let's take a look. From this last correction upwards, we actually had a mini correction. We pumped 126%, and in the meantime only had a correction of 13, 14, 15%. And now for the first time we're seeing a somewhat stronger correction, which still isn't that dramatic. Again, it's only about 15% or 16%, so not really either. And the market is super panicked for whatever reason. I just don't get it right now. But if we zoom out, we have this important psychological support at around 4,100. And now we've broken through that to the upside without really retesting it, but that's happened now. We've tested the psychological support here at around 4,100 plus the ribbon, and now we're also back at support at the 1.414 Fibonacci extension. In the last video, I also shared with you how to draw that exactly. That was the first target zone where some selling happened again at this top. I also sold here. So in both, or rather in 3 parts, I sold something here. And as you can see here now, it's just very clean. These are not coincidences, since this area has been marked as a valid potential zone from the lower price range, so it's no surprise we're finding such good support here. Now, from a daily chart perspective, we can also take a look at this on the 4-hour chart. You can really see how perfectly the candles are reacting to it here. And with Ethereum, it's the case that on the 4-hour chart, as I also mentioned again on Telegram, we currently have, well, it's actually the case that we have a valid bearish price action and it's continuing. The first exception we have now from a 4-hour chart perspective is that we didn't make a lower low here, and this could now serve as possible support to push us further upward. That's why I entered my long position here, following the Fibonacci principle as I usually do. This is this price range here. Sorry, no, I actually entered one step later. So I entered here because that was already valid, and I went long at 4,167, and as always my price target is the 0 level, which is currently 4,787, and it's playing out well at the moment. And especially on the 1-hour chart, it actually looks even better to me, because here, let me just quickly remove this again. Since Wednesday, we haven't made a new lower low, but are instead trying to form a bullish price action upwards. And that would be healthy. What would we need to break through to the upside as the last step so that this, at least on the hourly chart, becomes valid? Exactly this price range here. I even talked about it on Telegram that we've now managed to at least break through this price range here, meaning this high to the upside. With this area here, something is already valid for me, but not yet confirmed. It will actually be confirmed if we break through this area of 3,383, or let's say roughly the 3,400 mark, to the upside. Then this bullish price action could indeed continue validly for me. And that was very well signaled on the 1-hour chart. So personally, I'm quite neutral when it comes to the chart. Of course, we always have the option to include short positions, but a correction, especially for Ethereum, was really necessary at this point, especially a correction that perhaps, as with my trading strategy, brings us back to the Fibonacci levels once again. Because with all these massive pumps, we've rarely had that opportunity lately, and I actually still see the possibility for us to continue rising. Even just for the reason that if we look at the liquidation heat map, we have quite a bit sitting at around 120,000 for Bitcoin. It looks similar for Ethereum, so that we have a bit lying above that as well. Of course, we've had a significant correction now. Some shorts are lying above here, ready to be picked up. So if it goes up here to 4,456, that's an area that's super interesting for the market makers, right? Don't forget to leave me a like. For everyone who hasn't subscribed to my channel yet, I would be absolutely thrilled if you hit that subscribe button. Check out this very first video. 100% passive income on autopilot together with the community. It works extremely well. It's free to copy, costs nothing. You can just replicate it exactly the way we do it. And that's it for this video. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.